the Blackbird of Glanmore. On the grass when I arrive, filling the stillness with life, but ready to scare off at the very first wrong move. In the ivy when I leave, it's you, Blackbird, I love. I park, pause, take heed. Breathe. Just breathe and sit. And lines I once translated come back. I want away to the house of death, to my father under the low clay roof. And I think of one gone to him, a little stillness dancer, haunter son, lost brother, cavorting through the yard, so glad to see me home, my homesick first term over. And think of a neighbour's words long after the accident. Yon bird on the shed roof, up on the ridge for weeks. I said nothing at the time, but I never liked yon bird. The automatic lock clunks shut. The blackbird's panic is short-lived. For a second, I've a bird's-eye view of myself, a shadow on raked gravel in front of my house of life. Hedge hop, I am absolute for you, your ready talk-back, your each standoffish comeback, your picky, nervy gold-beak. On the grass when I arrive, in the ivy when I leave.
A vision. The future was a beautiful place once. Remember the full-blown balsa-wood town on public display in the Civic Hall? The ring-bound sketches, artists' impressions, blueprints of smoked glass and tubular steel, board game suburbs, modes of transportation, like fairground rides or executive toys. Cities like dreams, cantilevered by light. And people like us at the bottle bank next to the cycle path, or dog walking over tendered strips of fuzzy felt grass, or model drivers motoring home in electric cars, or after the late show strolling the boulevard. They were the plans, all underwritten in the neat left hand of architects, a true legible script. I pulled that future out of the north wind at the landfill site, stamped with today's date, riding the air with other such futures, all unlived in and now fully extinct.
The moment. The moment when, after many years of hard work and a long voyage, you stand in the center of your room, house, half-acre, square mile, island, country, knowing at last how you got there, and say, I own this, is the same moment the trees unloose their soft arms from around you, the birds take back their language, the cliffs fissure and collapse, the air moves back from you like a wave, and you can't breathe. No, they whisper, you own nothing. You were a visitor, time after time, climbing the hill, planting the flag, proclaiming, we never belonged to you. You never found us. It was always the other way round.
Cold Knap Lake. We once watched a crowd pull a drowned child from the lake. Blue-lipped and dressed in water's long green silk, she lay for dead. Then, kneeling on the earth, a heroine, her red head bowed, her wartime cotton frock soaked, my mother gave a stranger's child her breath. The crowd stood silent, drawn by the dread of it. The child breathed, bleating and rosy in my mother's hands. My father took her home to a poor house and watched her thrashed for almost drowning. Was I there? Or is that troubled surface something else shadowy under the dipped fingers of willows, where satiny mud blooms in cloudiness after the treading heavy webs of swans as their wings beat and whistle on the air? All lost things lie under closing water in that lake with the poor man's daughter.
Price we pay for the sun. These islands, not picture postcards for unravelling tourists, you know. These islands real, more real than flesh and blood. Past stone, past foam, these islands split bone. My mother's breast, like sleeping volcanoes. Who know what kind of sulphurous cancer tricking her below? While the wind constantly whipping my father's tears to salty hurricanes, and my grandmother's croon sifting sand, water mirroring palm. Poverty is the price we pay for the sun girl. Run come.
Neighbours. That spring was late. We watched the sky and studied charts for shouldering isobars. Birds were late to pair. Crows drank from the lamb's eye. Over Finland small birds fell, song thrushes steering north, smudged signatures on light, migrating warblers, nightingales. Wingbeats failed over fjords, each lung a sip of gall. Children were warned of their dangerous beauty. Milk was spilt in Poland. Each quarrel the blowback from some old story, a mouthful of bitter air from the Ukraine, brought by the wind out of its box of sorrows. This spring, a lamb sips cesium on a Welsh hill. A child, lifting her face to drink the rain, takes into her blood the poisoned arrow. Now we are all neighbourly, each little town in Europe twinned to Chernobyl, each heart with the burnt fireman, the child on the Moscow train. In the democracy of the virus and the toxin, we wait. We watch for bird migrations, one bird returning with green in its voice. Glasnost, Golai glass, a first break of blue.
Crossing the Loch. Remember how we rode toward the cottage on the sickle-shaped bay, that one night after the pub loosed us through its swinging doors, and we pushed across the shingle till water lipped the sides as though the Loch mouthed boat? I forget who rowed, our jokes hushed. The oars splash, creak, and the spill of the Loch reached long into the night. Out in the race I was scared, the cold shawl of breeze and hunched hills, what the water held of deadheads, ticking nuclear hulls. Who rowed and who kept their peace, who hauled salt air and stars deep into their lungs were not reassured, and who first noticed the Loch's phosphorescence, so like a twittering nest washed from the rushes, an astonished small boat of saints. We watched water shine in our fingers and oars, the magic dart of our bow wave. It was surely foolhardy, such a broad loch, a tide. But we live, and even have children to women and men we had yet to meet that night we set out, calling our own the sky and salt water, wounded hills dark-starred by blaeberries, the glimmering anklets we wore in the shallows as we shipped oars and jumped, to draw the boat safe, high at the cottage shore.
I was born and brought up in Burton-on-Trent, a brewing town in the English Midlands. It's the hardness of the water, its particular mix of dissolved minerals, that makes it suitable for brewing beer. This poem makes use of a couple of Burton expressions, the traditional greeting, "Hey up me duck," and the word mardy, which just means moody or sulky. Hard water. I tried the soft stuff on holiday in Wales, a mania of tea drinking and hair washing, excitable soap which never rinsed away. But I loved coming home to this, flat, straight, like the vowels, like the straight talk, hey up me duck. I'd run the tap with its swimming pool smell, get it cold and anaesthetic, stand the glass and let the little fizz of anxiety settle. Honest water, bright and not quite clean. The frankness of limestone, of gypsum, the sour steam of cooling towers, the alchemical taste of brewing. On pitiless nights, I had to go for the bus before last orders. I'd turn up my face, let rain scald my eyelids and lips. It couldn't lie, fell thick with a payload of acid. No salt, this rain had forgotten the sea. I opened my mouth, speaking nothing in spite of my book learning. I let a different cleverness wash my tongue. It tasted of work, the true taste of early mornings, the blunt taste of don't get mardy, of too bloody deep for me, fierce, lovely water that marked me for life as belonging, regardless.
London, by William Blake. I wander through each charted street, near where the charted Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. In every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every ban, the mind-forged manacles I hear. How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. But most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlot's curse blasts the newborn infant's tear, and blights with plagues the marriage hearse. Extract from the Prelude by William Wordsworth. One summer evening, led by her, I found a little boat tied to a willow tree, within a rocky cove, its usual home. Straight I unloosed her chain, and stepping in, pushed from the shore. It was an act of stealth, untroubled pleasure, nor without the voice of mountain echoes did my boat move on, leaving behind her still, on either side, small circles glittering idly in the moon, until they melted all into one track of sparkling light. But now, like one who rose, proud of his skill, to reach a chosen point with an unswerving line, I fixed my view upon the summit of a craggy ridge, the horizon's utmost boundary. Far above was nothing but the stars and the grey sky. She was an elfin pinnace. Lustily I dipped my oars into the silent lake, and, as I rose upon the stroke, my boat went heaving through the water like a swan. When from behind that craggy steep till then the horizon's bound, a huge peak, black and huge, as if with voluntary power instinct, upreared its head. I struck and struck again, and growing still in stature, the grim shape towered up between me and the stars, and still, for so it seemed, with purpose of its own, and measured motion like a living thing, strode after me. With trembling oars I turned, and through the silent water stole my way back to the covert of the willow tree. There in her mooring place I left my bark, and through the meadows homeward went, in grave and serious mood. But after I had seen that spectacle, for many days my brain worked with a dim and undetermined sense of unknown modes of being. O'er my thoughts there hung a darkness, call it solitude, or blank desertion. No familiar shapes remained, no pleasant images of trees, of sea or sky, no colours of green fields, but huge and mighty forms that do not live like living men, move slowly through the mind by day, and were a trouble to my dreams. The Wild Swans at Coole by W.B. Yeats. The trees are in their autumn beauty, the woodland paths are dry. Under the October twilight the water mirrors a still sky. Upon the brimming water among the stones are 59 swans. The 19th autumn has come upon me since I first made my count. I saw, before I had well finished, all suddenly mount, and scatter, wheeling, in great broken rings upon their clamorous wings. I have looked upon those brilliant creatures, and now my heart is sore. All's changed since I, hearing at twilight, the first time on this shore, the bell beat of their wings above my head, trod with a lighter tread. Unwearied still, lover by lover, they paddle in the cold, companionable streams, or climb the air. Their hearts have not grown old. Passion or conquest, wander where they will, attend upon them still. But now they drift on this still water, mysterious, beautiful. Among what rushes will they build? By what lake's edge or pool delight men's eyes when I awake some day to find they have flown away?
Spellbound by Emily Jane Brontë. The night is darkening round me, the wild winds coldly blow, but a tyrant's spell has bound me, and I cannot go. The giant trees are bending, their bare boughs wade with snow, and the storm is fast descending, and yet I cannot go. Clouds beyond clouds above me, wastes beyond wastes below, but nothing drear can move me. I will not, cannot go.
Below the green corrie. The mountains gathered round me like bandits. Their leader swaggered up close in the dark light, full of threats, full of thunders. But it was they who stood and delivered. They gave me their money and their lives. They filled me with mountains and thunders. My life was enriched with an infusion of theirs. I clambered downhill through the ugly weather, and when I turned to look goodbye to those marvellous prowlers, a sun shaft had pierced the clouds, and their leader, that swashbuckling mountain, was wearing a bandolier of light. Storm in the black forest. Now it is almost night. From the bronzy soft sky, jugful after jugful of pure white liquid fire, bright white, tipples over and spills down and is gone, and gold bronze flutters bent through the thick upper air. And as the electric liquid pours out, sometimes a still brighter white snake wriggles among it, spilled and tumbling wriggling down the sky, and then the heavens cackle with uncouth sounds, and the rain won't come, the rain refuses to come. This is the electricity that man is supposed to have mastered, chained, subjugated to his use, supposed to.
Wind by Ted Hughes. This house has been far out at sea all night. The woods crashing through darkness, the booming hills, winds stampeding the fields under the window, floundering black astride and blinding wet till day rose. Then, under an orange sky, the hills had new places, and wind wielded blade light, luminous black and emerald, flexing like the lens of a mad eye. At noon I scaled along the house side as far as the coal house door. Once I looked up, through the brunt wind that dented the balls of my eyes. The tent of the hills drummed and strained its guy rope, the fields quivering, the skyline a grimace, at any second to bang and vanish with a flap. The wind flung a magpie away, and a black bat gull bent like an iron bar slowly. The house rang like some fine green goblet in the note that any second would shatter it. Now, deep in chairs, in front of the great fire, we grip our hearts and cannot entertain book, thought, or each other. We watch the fire blazing and feel the roots of the house move, but sit on, seeing the window tremble to come in, hearing the stones cry out under the horizons.